Good afternoon, everyone. Sounds like you're having some pretty good conversations out there. It's good to hear. Got a nice crowd. Last meeting of the winter season this year, so I'm excited about that. Any engineers out there? You know what day it is? If you don't know what that means, ask your table mates. All right, do we have any University of Toledo employees out there? If you would please stand. Any UT employees? The reason I did that is so that your boss could meet you all if he hasn't. Little FaceTime. All right, make sure everybody's got their cell phone silenced, please. And I would like to now invite Heather Carnes up here to deliver a reflection, and Mari Davies will follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
Rotarians, today's reflection was adapted from the writings of Jack Knox, a pastor in the Mennonite Church. We dream of a world free of poverty and oppression, and we yearn for a world free of vengeance and violence. We pray for peace. When our hearts ache for the victims of war and oppression, may we remember to have faith in our ability to comfort bodies and minds and spirits that have been broken. When fear of the power and opinions of others tempt us not to speak up for the least among us, may we have the courage to risk speaking up, no matter the cost. When we tell ourselves that we have given all we can to bring peace to this world, abroad and in our own communities, let us remember to keep going and still do more. And in time filled with war, constant turmoil, and distress, may each of us do everything we can, each and every day, to be peacemakers. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just want to say a few words of thanks to Rotary, the flowers that the club sent. Thank you, President Bob, Jackie, whoever orchestrated that. They are very meaningful. Thank you so much for the kind comments and sentiments many of you shared online with the obituary. Rotary meant a great deal to John, and he was extremely active and committed way before he and I had the magic fortune of getting together in 1997. It's one of the many things for which I am deeply grateful to my husband. I invite you all who knew John to join in the celebration this Saturday at the Unitarian Church at 1 o'clock. Rotary meant so much to him, and it means so much, so deeply to me. Thank you.
And John meant a lot to our club for many, many years. So we're glad that he left a legacy of having Mari as one of our members. I would also like to thank Two Scale and their March's monthly sponsor, and Sharon Skilleter. Thank you for that. Do we have any visiting Rotarians or guests here today? If so, would you please go up to the microphone, the floor mic, and introduce them?
Short guy, got to move it.
Me too.
Please welcome Fred Danhauser, who is my guest today. He is a local owner of Focus CFO, which provides fractional financial services, meaning not services as you would think of as traditional, but CFO services for entrepreneurs, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations.
Welcome.
Good morning, Rotarians. I feel like I'm a guest here today, but it's been a while. With me today as my guest is Alexis Sakis, who is a very important person in our community, and that's because of the work she does. She is managing the Nature Conservancy here in Ohio, which is a big job. They're doing an amazing project out by the airport with hundreds of acres that are going to send cleaner water to our rivers and lakes, and thank God for the work that you do. She's never been to a Rotary meeting, and that's surprising. That it may be because nobody ever asked her before. So I was going to remind everyone that we do not let her see the secret handshake or the special dance. So with that, welcome.
Welcome, Fred. Welcome, Alexis. And I guarantee you, you will never see that secret handshake, since I have no clue what it might be. And next, we have a new member. I think some of you have met her before. Her name is Laura Kaprowski, and she will be introduced by board member Kendra Smith. So if you'd both please come on up. Look out for the
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. It's good to see so many of you here. So I have the honor of introducing a new Rotarian, but more importantly, my good friend, Laura Kaprowski, who is the Chief Executive Officer of TARDA. Laura brings 25 years of transit and transportation experience to her role as the CEO of TARDA. The Toledo native came home to work with TARDA in April of 2020 after serving as executive director of the Ohio Public Transit Association. She has a history of successfully executing innovative projects, including the Central Ohio Transit Authority's bus system redesign and redeployment of microtransit service. That's a mouthful. While at TARDA, Laura has led the implementation of TARDA's vaccine mobile, as well as new focus on economic development and workforce transit services. And as many of you know, if you were here for Laura's presentation, which feels like a couple weeks ago, was probably a couple months ago, was successful in leading the agency in their levy campaign in 2021. Laura has an undergraduate degree from Ohio University, fellow Bobcat of Green, and a master's degree in public administration from BGSU. She is married to her husband, Brian, and they have 2 boys, Brandon and Dylan. And what everybody always looks for in these, her pet peeve. So Laura's pet peeve is people who lack optimism and also people who do too much talking and not enough listening. So Laura is truly a gem in our community. Laura and I had the chance to meet before she even moved back to Toledo, and now I have the privilege of serving on her board, the TARDA board, and I will tell you we are lucky to have someone of her expertise and her commitment to community among us. So welcome to Rotary. We are more than privileged to have you in our ranks and look forward to serving with you.
I'll keep it short, given my pet peeve that Kendra mentioned. But I feel like you also many of you, I look out, and it was great to be here, see friends like Paul, and to present here a couple months ago. So, of course, I'm back as a member. I'm really, really excited to be here. And even though I'm a Falcon, I do want to say to Dr. Postel, I am in a divided or a combined household, so my husband's a UT Rocket grad. So thank you, and look forward to being involved.
Thank you, Kendra, and welcome, Laura. If you happen to have been at the meeting when Laura spoke, you will know that she's an excellent speaker, and it was really a good talk that she gave here a couple months ago now, maybe. I don't have too much to say. I'm going to get through my remarks pretty quickly. Mainly, I just want you to know, don't forget to sign up for the So Hope Food Pack. at St. John's High School. And that's coming up April 9th, and you can find the contact info, the sign-up info in the Spoke. And there's a few other events, the car raffle, and a few other things in the Spoke. So open it up, take a look, punch on a few of those things, and let's keep active. Finally, I want to introduce Ben Barrows. If you'd please come on up here. Rotarian Ben Barrows, and he's going to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, President Bob, fellow Rotarians. It's good to see you today. This is my first in-person meeting in 2 years. It's really great to be back. Won't be another 2 years till I'm back. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person much more frequently. It's my great pleasure and privilege to introduce my colleague and boss's boss, the president of the University of Toledo, Dr. Gregory Postel. Dr. Postel is the former interim president and executive vice president for health affairs at the University of Louisville. Immediately before joining us, he was a senior client partner at the consulting firm Korn Ferry. He has more than 25 years of experience with academic medical centers, university operations, clinical care, teaching, and research. In addition to his extensive administrative and leadership experience, Dr. Postel is an accomplished academic interventional neuroradiologist, which is quite a mouthful, I have to say. He served for 18 years as chair of the Department of Radiology at the University of Louisville School of Medicine, and held the position of vice dean for clinical affairs and chairman of the board at the University Medical Center in Louisville. He was the founding board chair and later the CEO of University of Louisville Physicians. He's a graduate of the College of Worcester and Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. Dr. Postel completed a residency in radiology at the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and a fellowship in neuroradiology at the Mayo Clinic Foundation. It's been really a pleasure and it's wonderful to work with Dr. Postel. And under his leadership, the University of Toledo is really headed in a very positive direction. We've all seen the immediate impact that his leadership has had on our hospital at the University of Toledo Medical Center, and as you can tell, he really has the background to get that ship headed in the right direction. But the entire university and the university leadership is behind him 100% as he leads us to new heights, and I really personally enjoy working with him almost every day. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Gregory Postel.
I don't think I have any slides. Nope, don't need it. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Dean Barrows, for those generous introductory remarks. I appreciate it. To President Bob and all assembled, I can't tell you what a pleasure it is for me to join you in fellowship here today and to bring the greetings of our faculty, staff, and students at the University of Toledo. So having a new member, Laura, who talks about a pet peeve around long-winded people is probably not a very subtle way to give a message to the speaker. So I'll do my very best to keep things brief yet interesting and informative at the same time. So as COVID, at least for the time being, seems to be weakening a bit, I'm reminded regularly how wonderful it is to be able to enjoy these face-to-face interactions again. It's such an important facet of the development of relationships and the networking that the Rotarians are so well known for. So it is my pleasure to be here. I attended quite a few Rotary meetings in Louisville, where I lived for almost 25 years, and I was frequently asked, why did you never join? And the only reason I could ever come up with was because of the attendance requirements. So of course, in the old days, there was attendance taken, and I would have been thrown out immediately because my schedule is such that it would have been really hard to have a good record. But I understand that is no longer the case, and so maybe this is a fresh consideration. You have a terrific organization focused on so many valuable missions in the community. So many of you are business people, perhaps in some way all of you are business people, and as a result you know that businesses have ups and downs, businesses have to modify the way they conduct their operations over time in order to stay viable and to move to the future in a way that allows them to thrive and grow. And universities are no exception. Now, using the term business associated with the university is something that is not universally appreciated, let's say, in an academic community, because many in our profession believe that things such as teaching and patient care and research are actually missions. And, you know, a mission can't be a business, right? Well, as it turns out, we're both. We are a mission-driven organization, and that's what attracts us to the Academy, and that will never change. But the fact of the matter is we also must sustain ourselves and be able to make appropriate investments in order to grow. And so we are a business, like it or not. So when I was invested as the 18th president of the University of Toledo last fall, in my remarks I talked a bit about the need to reimagine the university. That's the term that I used. And so today I just want to give all of you a few very practical examples of what reimagining means in the context of post-secondary education, because it's different from what you might think. So I've picked 4 examples, and since I've already mentioned the pandemic, let's talk briefly about COVID and what happened to us and what lies ahead. So the pandemic had so many devastating effects on the world and affected every corner of the world in a different way. Universities, as you might imagine, were profoundly impacted by the COVID epidemic. We had countless individuals who, for the past 2 years, have literally taken on a second job alongside their day job, helping our campus community stay safe and protected from what could have been a worse set of conditions. So we had individuals sanitizing rooms, and you can only imagine how many rooms there are at a university, providing protective equipment, testing for COVID, then when vaccinations became available, administering vaccines, later administering boosters, providing housing for students who had either been exposed to the virus or who had tested positive, putting together and populating registries and dashboards to keep the campus community informed about the number of cases and how many people were vaccinated, people to interface with federal, state, and local officials around an ever-changing set of requirements and guidelines pertaining to COVID. So you can imagine the work for 23,000 people to keep something like that well organized and to try to keep people well informed. But thanks to the work of many, we did that, and we weathered the storm as well as we could have. Our numbers were consistently lower than the Lucas County numbers for positivity. We ended up vaccinating almost 80% of our entire campus population, which is a good percentage considering, again, community norms. And so we're proud of this effort, and we did it because at a university there's a sense of belonging. We are a family. We call it the Rocket Nation, and so of course we would do everything possible to look out for one another's health and well-being. So it's a somewhat of a happy story on a very sad situation. We pulled together in the face of trial. Now, looking ahead, of course, we have no idea if this pause in the virus is permanent or not. But as we think ahead beyond the coronavirus, what does this mean? So let's reimagine the university. And so this is an exercise that universities around the country are actively engaged in, trying to understand what the delivery of curriculum and what the college experience is going to mean now that we know we can do things another way, right? So the people who came up with Zoom obviously had no idea what a great invention that was, and obviously we all were grateful to have tools like Zoom and WebEx and Teams and all the other remote access options that thankfully were available, because even during the days when we were not having face-to-face instructions, students were able to attend classes, faculty were able to teach, tests were given, grades were delivered, diplomas were granted. The university did not come to a grinding halt because the technology allowed that. So the question is, now that we know it can be done, is that what we want to do? I mean, I guess we could just close the campus, right, and do everything remotely, other than the clinical work and the things that must be face-to-face. So there has been a lot of research done very, very recently, surveying the attitudes of faculty, staff, and students around this, and I'm happy to report that an extremely small percentage of people wish for things to be entirely remote. That is absolutely not the sentiment within higher education. Now, I'll tell you that there is also, though, a very, very small percentage who think that everything should be face-to-face, right? So maybe it's 10% on each end, and then the 80% in the middle like the idea of some kind of hybrid delivery model, which makes sense, because there you can capture some of the efficiencies associated with a virtual environment, but at the same time not lose sight of the value of face-to-face interaction. I have friends who work at the Harvard Business School, and they have had some very interesting observations during the pandemic. So many students who were admitted to the Harvard Business School decided to defer attending. They had the option of attending virtually and getting their degree, no problem, but they chose not to. Why? Well, I mean, one of the reasons you go to the Harvard Business School is because of who you're going to rub elbows with, right? Your classmates become your future contacts, which could give you the opportunity of a lifetime, right, in terms of what you do next. The quality of the education there is, in all honesty, probably not any different than the quality of our MBA here at the University of Toledo. But you're going to meet different people at the Harvard Business School, so hence the deferral. And I think that's why most people recognize that moving to an entirely virtual environment really is not in the best interest of a high-quality education. Not to speak of the benefit for those students who choose a residential campus life, where there are innumerable benefits associated with not just living on campus, but all the organizations and the opportunities to participate with your colleagues and learn at the same time. So the hybrid environment, what's it look like? Well, last week I attended a two-day session at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, and it was focused on understanding how universities are analyzing their needs for the delivery of curriculum and for space utilization in the days to come. And so we heard reports from places like Virginia and the Wharton School of Business and the Johns Hopkins University. And obviously these are organizations with, let's say, a little more expendable income than we have, but they have stepped out ahead and they have hired consultants to engage in a data-driven approach to understanding future space needs. And as a result, they're redesigning classrooms with cross-functional capability. They're looking at whether faculty members need to have their own offices. They're saying how much time do faculty members actually spend in their office, what percentage of time is a classroom utilized, understanding both the functional and the territorial aspects of the sharing of space, right? And so this is a terrific exercise. I think it's one that all universities will be engaging in. We're going to do it here. A little bit slower because we don't have the pockets that Wharton School of Business does, but nevertheless, it's the right thing to do, and particularly on a campus such as ours, where a lot of the buildings are 50 to 100 years old, remodeling needs to be done anyway, right? And so if one has to do something to update the space, why not do it in a way that appropriately faces forward and understands the future reality. So there's an example of how a university might reimagine itself in terms of its use of space and adapting to the realities of a post-COVID world to best meet the needs of our students and our faculty and our staff. So example 2 has to do with a strategic planning process that we are in the midst of conducting. So we have a very robust strategic planning process. Our A plan expires in the summer of this year. It was a 5-year plan. It's ending this year. So therefore, we have to develop a successor plan. I'm happy to say a couple of the brilliant people on that committee are in this room with us today. I won't embarrass them, but Mark and Susan, thank you for your efforts. So this group is meeting actively and is in the midst of trying to understand the campus climate around what's important to the University of Toledo going forward. And I won't bore you with all the details, plus they're still in the middle of their work, but I will tell you that a concept central to their thinking is the concept of prioritization. This is something that universities do a very poor job of dealing with, okay? So it's often said universities add better than they subtract, right? Universities are happy to add new programs and this and that and whatever. That's easy. But, oh boy, you try to get rid of something, regardless of the reason, right? No student demand, no workforce need in the community, regardless of why you might sundown something, there is inertia and an active resistance to making reductions in any activities. So this concept of prioritization is new to universities, but it is critically important to any business. So when I got here, people bragged to me and they said, you know, we are one of 27 universities in the entire United States that has the full spectrum of schools. We have medical school, we have law school, pharmacy, nursing, engineering, natural sciences and mathematics, engineering, education. You just go right down the list. There's 14 of them, right? So there's only 27 universities in the whole country that offer this. And as I heard that initially, I thought, are you bragging or complaining, right? Because try to support all of that unless you're one of the other 26 schools on the list. So the other 26 schools on the list are the University of Michigan, Ohio State University, USC, UCLA, right? Places that have lots and lots and lots of students, right? And they've got so many students at Ohio State that they decided that they would just cut back 5,000 this year because they were a little bit crowded. So just a very different set of realities. Yet, we have a similar breadth of programming. And so I like to say, you know, we're a mile wide and an inch deep. Now, we have really, really bright, creative people, so maybe it's 2 inches deep, but it's still thin, right, compared to the breadth. And hence the need to understand how prioritization looks, because if you don't have the ability to double down on things where there's opportunity or demand, then how do you ever grow, right? There's a dilutional effect to being too broad. And I think that's what the university has experienced over time, particularly as enrollment at the university has been down, as it is a lot of places around the country, but particularly here. So this is a very critical exercise, and it's my second example of reimagining the university, one where we prioritize the way we use our dollars, our people, our facilities. How do we utilize our academic resources? Third example of reimagining is what I'll call the student experience. So while we do a lot of things, we take care of patients, we do research, at the heart of it, we're a university, so we're a school, we teach, right? That's the main thing we do. And we can do a lot better job. We have to do a better job of recruiting students. We have to do a better job of retaining students. We have to make sure they graduate. We have to make sure they're happy. We have to make sure they feel included and part of a diverse, welcoming community. And I think we do a lot of those things, but we can do all of them better. You know, we do not have enough academic advisors and success coaches. The ratio is far too high. 800 students per advisor. Right? It should be about a quarter of that. Costs a lot of money. We're going to find it, and we're going to do that. But there's an example. The conditions of our residential facilities. You know, they were nice 20 years ago, but not so much anymore. And this impacts the interest level, as you might imagine, of incoming students to be residential students. And I think that's an important part of campus experience, particularly in the first couple years of undergraduate education. Just how we interact and treat one another, how easy is it to get things done? You know, what's the response when you call someone? You get a pleasant response? Is the person helpful? You get a warm handoff? Or are you talking to a robot, right? I mean, just we need to learn from the people at Walt Disney and other places that have figured out customer service and put those things to better use so that our students want to be with us, want to stay with us, want to graduate, and then, of course, go on to do great things. So this concept of enhancing the student experience in all of those ways is another example of reimagining a university, because it is a competitive world. And, you know, we laugh about Bowling Green and we tease people who went to school there, but it's a great school. It's 25 miles away and they're competitors, right? And so if we're not as good or better, we're in trouble. And we've seen examples of that where they have gained ground in areas where they shouldn't have. And that's not going to continue. And then a fourth example is on the medical front. And so we have some amazing resources at the university in terms of healthcare. We have a hospital, we have a medical school, we have a nursing school, we have a pharmacy school, we have a school of health and human services. We have research activities, as you might imagine, very significant around all of those things. We have a simulation center. And so what I'm describing actually used to be its own university. You know, those of you who have lived here a long time remember the Medical College of Ohio. It was a separate state university which merged with the University of Toledo in '06 to be the university we are today. But there's a whole world down there on the South Toledo campus that represents our healthcare footprint. And it's extremely important to the people of South Toledo, and I might say beyond that. Some of the services that are offered at UTMC are unique. We're the only renal transplant center in Northwest Ohio. And our volume this year, we think, will approach 200 transplants. Might not sound like a lot, but that's about what they do at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, which is widely known as, you know, one of the finest transplant centers in the country. So, you know, we have niche programs like that that are not only unique, but of very, very high quality. We have research there that is quite unique. During the COVID pandemic, there was research done there around the care of COVID patients, which led to extraordinarily good outcomes for the people who were unlucky enough to have been hospitalized during the pandemic. And so this was an asset that was in real trouble, obviously, a couple of years. I'm happy to say it's on solid footing now, and that hospital is doing well and is going to do really well in the future. We're not looking to take over the whole healthcare market in Toledo, so if there are any people here from ProMedica, don't worry. We're not looking to put you out of business, but, you know, we want to be a high-quality competitor and an important part of the mix in the medical makeup of the Northwest Ohio area. So we're working on ways now to strengthen our physician group, to bring it in closer alignment with our hospital so that we can really function more like a university healthcare operation should, not as a fragmented operation as we have historically. So once again, an example of reimagining the university. So I could give you many examples, but I think those are ones that come to mind first because they are, you know, very important components of the work that we do, and they're also really significant transformations. You know, these things that I have described are not tweaks or subtle changes. You know, they're fundamentally different ways of doing business. And as I talk to my fellow presidents around the country, this is the conversation. You know, how do we face the future? You know, what we have been doing for years and years may have been fine then, but as we try to modernize and re-articulate our value proposition going forward, we have to be very creative about the ways that we see the work that we do. So I guess before taking questions, I'll just say that, you know, as we sit here today and we think about our various businesses, and in our case, the business of the university and all those concerns, we are reminded every day when we look at the news that there's real trouble in the world and there are people who have concerns that are far greater than ours. And so there's a constant need for us to be grateful for the many things that we do have that are working well, and I like to stay grounded in that. And one of those things is fellowship, which I'm seeing today, and I'm just so grateful that you invited me. I'd love to come back and join you again. I'm happy to take questions if you have them.
Dr. Postel, thank you very much for coming. I'm delighted you're here for a couple of reasons, but I want to say a couple things first. One is, for those of you that know Alex Majoritsky, his story was on the front page of the Blade on Saturday morning. Marvelous story about how his family entirely escaped the former Soviet Union in 1992 and came here and got PhDs and went on and became successful presidents of big and successful companies. Wonderful story. Please read it. The second thing is, I think you're probably the only person in the room besides me that knew Ted Williams.
Oh, at the College of Worcester?
Yep.
Really? Wow.
So, Ted Williams was a wonderful professor of analytical chemistry at the College of Worcester. Now, I love Worcester, but I love Hope College, where I went a lot more. And I got to tell you that all the belly aching in the Blade about the University of Toledo's basketball problems and Bowling Green's basketball. Do they have a basketball team down south? I'm not sure. Anyway. Anyway, my alma mater, Hope College, is playing in the Division III Final Four in Pittsburgh this weekend. So if you got something to do Thursday night, or if you don't, go to Pittsburgh and watch Hope play Trine. Never heard of Trine. I never did either. But Tri-State, former Tri-State. They've played twice before this year, and whoever wins plays Wisconsin Whitewater, which I think somebody around here, there's some alumni around this place of that place. Anyway, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Ted Williams was a legend at the College of Worcester. I think he was a faculty member there for almost 40 years, something like that. He was also the first African-American STEM professor at the College of Worcester. So he was very interesting, bright man, analytical chemist. Yeah, it's good memory. Yeah.
Physician, and I'm glad to see that physician is leading the university. I think first time in a long time at University of Toledo. And my second question is that I'm UTMC grad as well. I finished my training in 1976. My question to you about physician manpower at UTMC. 15, 20 years ago, this was the place to go for specialty care. But over the last decade, sort of has fallen behind other groups. So what are your plans to build the services and get back the preeminence of UTMC in Northwest Ohio?
Sure. Well, it's a very complicated question. I mean, the reasons for the change in the status of UTMC over the years are numerous. Some of them are business realities, some of them are political realities, some of them are related to different philosophies of the leadership of the university and its board over time. But the UTMC was in a period of decline probably for 15 or 20 years, if the truth be known. I mean, if you look at the equipment there and the age of some of it, the deferred maintenance had been accumulating there over a long period of time, and the egress of physicians and staff was gradual and then started to accelerate as the university looked at dramatic options, including selling or closing the hospital. So since the decision has been made to revitalize the hospital and to stabilize its finances, we've been in the business of modernizing equipment. So we've purchased a $28 million electronic health record to replace one that was literally on its last legs. We've replaced imaging equipment, telemetry equipment, which is what you use to monitor patients who are in intensive care settings, Pyxis inventory equipment, all sorts of things that had outlived their useful lifespan. And so we're getting the physical plant back in good shape, and now we're in the process of hiring physicians and then also partnering with physicians in other groups, since we have an open medical staff, to develop the services that we think we can deliver in a really effective manner there. So you have to think about the size of that hospital. It has the potential to be a 300-bed hospital, which by university standards is small. You go up to the University of Michigan, it's more like 1,500 beds, right? And so when you have a small hospital like that, it can do well, but it can't do everything. And so we're in the process right now, just like we're trying to prioritize our academic offerings, we are also going to have to prioritize our medical offerings and do a subset of things that we can do the very best and where we can be competitive and where patients who want good care are going to want to gravitate, as opposed to trying to do a little bit of everything, which would be silly with a small hospital. So we're in the early stages of rebuilding back to what you remember from your days at the Medical College of Ohio, and it's a slow process, but it'll work. I know because I did this once before. I had the exact same problem in Louisville. I was there for 25 years, and that hospital now owns 4 other hospitals. And so this is a doable project, but it doesn't occur overnight.
Thank you very much. It's uplifting, I should say.
Dr. Postel, thank you very much for being here. Our club has set as a priority educational attainment, specifically focused on universal pre-K in Northwest Ohio. I'm just curious, from your seat with the University of Toledo, what role, if any, the university plays in raising the educational attainment of Northwest Ohio beyond just the students who attend the university?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I view a university as having an obligation to the community in which it lives and works, and that means a lot of different things. Community engagement is a broad concept, but a portion of it obviously relates to making sure we can meet the workforce demand of the area. Okay, so what is going to be required for economic viability in this part of the state? Even in the President's State of the Union address a couple weeks ago, there was mention of the Rust Belt, right, and how we have to get past that definition where Northern Ohio has been viewed as an area in decay, and think more along the lines of more recent things that the RGP has been talking about. Toledo is a great place to move a business, right? We even were picked as one of the most favorable locations to move a business. So we want to capitalize on that, but to do so, we have to be able to generate a lot of our own workforce and not simply rely on importing it. So, your mention of pre-K, I mean, the pipeline process begins long before college for this, right? And so, some of these things, if I'm lucky, will be fixed long after I retire, but the creation of pipelines is critical, and we see a lot of underprepared students for a variety of reasons coming into our college. Now, one of the things I like the most about our mission, but one of the things that's also the most difficult about it, is that we accept most of the students who apply by far, okay? We are not elite. We don't try to, only bring those students in with 4-point averages who we know are going to graduate in 4 years. That's not us. We have students like that. We have 1,500 students almost next year in our honors college, so we have some of the best and brightest students you'll ever meet. But we also have a mission to the community to try to help everybody, because you find a lot of diamonds in the rough. And so one of the most gratifying things to do is to bring in underprepared students, get them up to speed, and then see the great things they can do. Sadly, when that's your mission, not everybody makes it, right? I mean, just think about the odds. It's not going to be Vanderbilt, where they've got a 99% graduation rate. You're going to have some that don't make it. So the better prepared students are coming into college, the better their chances are for being successful. So, summer bridge programs, magnet high schools, work your way backwards to universal pre-K, any of those kinds of things that can be done to strengthen the quality of the students coming through that pipeline is going to make our job easier and give us a greater opportunity to favorably impact the community.
Good to see you here
Nice to see you again.
at our Rotary Club. One compliment just to pass on before I ask you a question. I was with leadership from one of the other larger universities around here recently, and they said they think that University of Toledo and other colleges around here are partnering better now than they have in decades. So, which was great to hear from the community's perspective. You talked about a little bit of paring back of enrollment, which you, along with most of your colleagues, share. I was just curious, are there certain segments of students, or I don't know, certain programs where you've seen more decline or less students coming here than others?
Yeah, so the enrollment decline at the University of Toledo is about 12 years in nature. It began probably 2008 or so, as near as we can tell, and then accelerated during the pandemic, right? So the reasons for it are many. I won't get into all of them, but the fixes are pretty straightforward. So while our primary mission is to serve students from this area and from Northwest Ohio, and that'll always be the primary mission, we can't survive with that mission alone because the demographic in this area has been declining and is predicted to further decline. So we can't rely exclusively on that. So we have been doing a lot of recruiting farther afield. We're putting satellite recruiters in major cities across the country, from coast to coast. Some of them are already in place. Some of them in the process of being hired. So part of it is widening the lens. And then attracting adult students to come back. Many people in Toledo have some education under their belt, but they don't have a degree. And we'd love to find an easy way for them to come back and get a completer degree. Studies show that if you have some college, you have no better earning potential than if you have no college. Whereas if you have a college degree, obviously the picture changes, right? So we'd like to get as many partial graduates across the finish line as possible. So we've set up an adult and transfer center. We are looking to greatly expand our online course offerings. This year, our international applications are up 60%, in part thanks to the COVID pandemic slowing down. We're forming partnerships, to a point that was mentioned, thank you for saying that, with two-year colleges particularly, around articulation agreements, students who choose to move from a two-year to a four-year pathway, or the other way around. So we're working closely with Owens and other universities on those kinds of programs. So I guess having a more well-rounded approach to how we recruit is really going to be the answer, and it's conceptually simple, but it takes some time, as you might imagine, for that to play out.
Chuck Stocking here. I have a question related to the pandemic and how it may have impacted your community in terms of what they are defining as socio-emotional issues. But your pipeline is going to be very impacted by it. These are the kids who are in elementary school today that they're looking at maybe a 2 or 3 year loss of learning. And I wonder if there's a role that the University of Toledo could play in helping to remedy this socio-emotional issues that are out there and are going to affect your pipeline of students in the future.
Yeah, the problem you mentioned is of enormous importance and something that educators are well aware of. There is a sharp uptick in depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation in this country, and it's prevalent among young people. We've had more episodes than I would care to tell you about in the last few months, where we have, had our student affairs people at the bedside of a student who attempted suicide and is recovering and now getting the help that they need. This happens regularly. Every once in a while there is a suicide. We average about 3 a year, which to me might as well be 1,000. I'll tell you, it's no higher than the national average. That's nothing to brag about, but it needs to be 0. But this is a real problem. And you're right, it starts well before college. High school students and elementary school students who have not been attending class, who have been schooled at home or not, and are less well prepared, needless to say, than they would have been. And so this sort of thing augments the need for us to provide bridge programs to help students get back in the swing of studying and become acclimated to college. I mentioned earlier advisors. This is no time to have an 800-to-1 ratio of academic advisors and success coaches. There's going to need to be a lot more individual attention paid. We're adding staffing and capability to our counseling center, so that's actively underway. You should see the long list of offerings we have for students with depression and mental illness. There is a quickly growing lattice work of support mechanisms for these students on our campus. So, yeah, these things are all front and center. They're resource-intensive things, which again, from a business perspective, is a real problem, but we have no alternative but to find ways to provide them.
One comment. Okay.
You've had your turn.
I can skip it.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, I just want to say a British philosopher, his name is Oakeshott. He said the trouble with the world is there's less conversation between mankind, between different nations, cultures, groups, kids. So if there's the more conversation and interaction, this will improve our socio-emotional problems.
I agree. Thank you.
Now you can clap.
Appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Hang on 1 second. Thanks so much. That was a great discussion, and if anybody has any more questions they would like to ask afterward, Dr. Postel has agreed to stay around for a few minutes, so I appreciate that. And in appreciation for your talk today, we'd like to give you a book by our past president, Clint Mock, Historical Tales of Toledo, and I think you'll find it informative, probably a few things you had not known about Toledo before.
Thank you very, very much. I thought I was going to get the bell as a gift, so we could use it to call meetings
I'm
together.
not even going to let him ring it. But what I will do, we will make a donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name also.
You're very kind.
So thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right, very informative. I had a few questions, but we don't have time. So what I would like to do is tell you next week, we will not be meeting here. We will be at the main library for at least the next 2 weeks. You park underneath if that's free parking. You can park on the street if you want. But if you come in from below, you go all the way to the front, take the stairs or the elevator, go upstairs, go all the way toward the back. And it's a big glass. You should be able to find it pretty easy. It's just on the first floor. Our speakers will be a panel of Judges Mary Ann Whipple and Jeffrey Helmick, and they will talk about the new Ashley U.S. Courthouse, new annex, and the modernization plans. So next week it still will be $15 for lunch. You can pay at the door, pay in advance. I would also like to say thank you for the guests. Thank you for bringing the guests, Fred and Alexis. And again, welcome new member Laura. With that, we are adjourned.